Picture this, a single, unbroken thread of sunlight slicing through the morning haze, catching on the surface of our backyard pool like a blade of pure gold. It's not just light, it's a silent accusation, daring me to notice how still everything has become. My name is Angela, and at 50, I've woven 27 years of my life into a tapestry with Gregory, my husband. Once, our marriage was a garden bursting with untamed color, wildflowers of laughter and late-night whispers, petals of passion that seemed to grow overnight. Now, it's more like a manicured lawn. Neat, orderly, safe. But the wild blooms? They've long since withered, leaving behind a quiet that feels heavier each day. I'm sitting here now, as I often do, on a woven lounge chair by the pool in our Southern California home. This suburban slice of paradise, tucked into an affluent neighborhood, is all palm trees and privacy, with a high wooden fence shielding us from prying eyes. The pool itself, pristine, shimmering, a perfect mirror of the sky, used to be our heart. Countless summers were spent here, splashing through memories that now feel like they belong to someone else. These days, it's more of a relic, a glassy reminder of what once was. I've got my embroidery hoop in my lap, my needle threading through fabric to create roses and vines, delicate little lies of beauty. Sometimes, though, I abandon the stitching altogether and just stare at the water, letting my thoughts drift like leaves on its surface. There's a hollow space inside me, a quiet ache I can't quite name, a yearning for something, anything, to break through the monotony. Across from me, Gregory sits in his faded Adirondack chair, the same one he's claimed for years. At 53, my husband, a retired accountant, is a man of precision, a creature of habit who finds comfort in straight lines and balanced ledgers. His face is half hidden behind the morning newspaper, the pages rustling softly as he turns them with a kind of mechanical rhythm. Every now and then, he reaches for his chipped mug, sipping black coffee with the same measured pace he applies to everything. I watch him sometimes, wondering what he's thinking behind that wall of newsprint. Is he as lost in this stillness as I am? Or has he made peace with it in a way I never could? The silence between us isn't sharp or angry. It's not the kind of quiet that cuts. It's more like the steady hum of cicadas on a summer evening, constant, unremarkable, just there. When we do speak, it's about the mundane. Bills that need paying, groceries we're running low on, a passing remark about the heat or the chance of rain. Our words are functional, stripped of anything deeper, like we've forgotten how to reach for each other beyond the surface. I don't resent him for it, not really. This life we've built is comfortable, stable, a well-structured routine. That morning felt different, though I couldn't have told you why at first. The air was thicker, maybe, or the sunlight a little too insistent as it poured over the pool. I was still in my usual spot, my embroidery hoop resting idle in my lap, when Gregory did something he hadn't done in ages. He lowered his newspaper, not just a quick fold to sip his coffee, but all the way down, letting it rest on his knee as he looked at me with an odd sort of purpose in his eyes. "Angela," he said, his voice steady but with an edge I couldn't place. "What do you think about having some of the guys from the club over today? Weather's perfect for a pool day, and it's been too long since we've hosted." His tone was light, almost too casual, like he'd practiced the line in his head. I blinked at him, caught completely off guard. Hosting us? We hadn't had anyone over in years, not since the last awkward barbecue where we ran out of things to say before the burgers were even off the grill. Our solitude was our fortress, and now he wanted to throw open the gates? I didn't know what to make of it, but I didn't have the energy to push back. Part of me was curious, I'll admit, to see what this breach in our routine might bring. So I just nodded, murmuring a soft, "Sure, why not?" I got to work after that, slipping upstairs to change. I pulled on my old navy one-piece swimsuit, the kind that's more about coverage than flair, worn thin at the edges from years of use. Over it, I draped a sheer cover-up, light as a whisper, that fluttered against my skin as I moved through the house. The warm breeze coming through the open windows felt like a tease, a promise of something I couldn't name. Downstairs, I busied myself with preparations, setting out trays on the patio table by the pool. Sliced watermelon, its ruby flesh glistening in the sun, a plate of cheese and crackers arranged just so, and a tall pitcher of iced tea with condensation already beating on the glass. As I worked, a flicker of anticipation stirred in my chest. Company. Actual people in our space. It was a small thing, but it felt like a crack in the endless quiet, a chance for something to shift. It wasn't long before I heard the rumble of a car pulling into the driveway, followed by the sound of voices, deep, lively, cutting through the stillness like a blade. I stepped outside just as they rounded the corner into the backyard, 4 men in swim trunks and sunglasses, towing a portable bar cart stacked with bottles and mixers. Gregory had mentioned the guys, but seeing them in person was something else entirely. First was Dante, about 45, with a bronzed tan that spoke of hours under the sun and a mischievous grin that seemed to promise trouble. Then Marcus, pushing 50, loud and jovial, his booming. As I climbed out of the pool, water streamed down my legs, cool rivulets tracing paths over my skin, pooling at my feet on the sun-warmed tiles. The swim had left me invigorated, my muscles humming with a quiet energy, and the laughter of the guys, Dante, Marcus, Ethan, and Caleb, still echoed in my ears, a rare sound in this usually silent backyard. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in ages, the company stirring something restless inside me. I was just catching my breath when Dante approached, his dark eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my pulse skip. He offered a hand to help me up the steps, and I took it, his grip firm and steady. As I found my footing, his hand lingered just above my knee, a touch that felt both accidental and deliberate, sending a jolt through me. The heat of his skin against mine was electric, a stark contrast to the coolness of the water still clinging to me. My breath caught in my throat, a sudden tightness I couldn't ignore. And then he flashed a slow, knowing smile, his voice low as he said, "You have a body that can't be ignored." I laughed it off, flustered, my cheeks burning under the midday sun. But inside, something dormant sparked to life, a dangerous mix of flattery and forbidden curiosity that I hadn't felt in years. I glanced around, noticing the others heading inside with Gregory to grab more drinks. Their voices, Marcus's booming laugh, Ethan's quieter quips, Caleb's occasional interjections, faded as they disappeared through the sliding glass door, leaving Dante and me alone by the pool. The air shifted, growing heavier, charged with something unspoken that hung between us like a storm cloud ready to break. Dante stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, the scent of chlorine and sunscreen mixing with something earthier, more primal. His voice dropped even lower, a murmur I felt as much as heard, and then his hand reached out, fingers brushing my face, tracing a slow, deliberate path down my neck. My skin prickled under his touch, every nerve awake, and I froze, torn between pulling away and leaning in. My mind screamed to step back, to remember where I was, who I was with. But my body betrayed me, rooted to the spot. I didn't resist. I couldn't. The tension snapped like a taut wire, and in that moment, I let myself fall into the rush, right there on the lounger by the pool, under a hastily thrown towel that barely shielded us from the world. The distant crash of waves from a nearby beach mingled with the pounding of my own heartbeat, a rhythm that drowned out everything else. It was a stolen moment, a reckless dance of desire and danger, and I felt the weight of it all, guilt and exhilaration crashing over me in equal waves. I don't regret it, not even now as I speak these words. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, like I'd been underwater all this time and finally broke the surface to breathe. But then, as I adjusted the towel and tried to steady my breathing, my eyes drifted toward the shade near the patio. And there he was, Gregory, sitting under his umbrella, his phone in hand, the lens pointed directly at us. My stomach dropped, a cold dread seeping into my bones, but what I saw on his face wasn't what I expected. There was no anger, no betrayal, not even a flicker of shock. His expression was calm, almost serene, and as our eyes met across the distance, he did something that turned my world upside down. He mouthed the words, "Don't stop. I want you to feel alive again." My mind reeled, confusion and shock tangling together in a knot I couldn't unravel. What was this? Was he serious? The surreal realization hit me like a tidal wave. He wasn't just okay with what he'd seen. He was encouraging it, maybe even orchestrating it. My heart raced faster now, not from passion, but from the sheer weight of this bombshell. How long had he been there? Had he planned for this moment, inviting the guys over with an ulterior motive I couldn't yet comprehend? My heart was still hammering in my chest, Gregory's words looping through my mind like a haunting refrain. "Don't stop. I want you to feel alive again." I couldn't grasp it, couldn't wrap my head around the permission he'd just given me, a key to a door I didn't even know existed. My initial shock was a tidal wave, crashing over me, but beneath it, something else stirred. A wild, reckless abandon I hadn't felt in decades. It was as if his words had unshackled something deep within me, a part of myself I'd buried under years of routine and restraint. I sat there on the lounger, the towel barely draped over us, the sun scorching my skin as if it, too, was urging me to let go. Dante, sensing no pushback, no hesitation in my frozen frame, grew bolder. His touch was no longer tentative. It was deliberate, a slow exploration that sent shivers racing down my spine despite the heat. His fingers traced paths that felt like fire, igniting every nerve, and I let myself sink deeper into the moment, drowning in the sensation of being wanted, of being seen. The world narrowed to just this. The press of his warmth against me, the ragged rhythm of my own breath, the way the towel shifted with every subtle movement, offering only the illusion of cover. I was lost in that haze, in the forbidden thrill of it all, when the sound of footsteps snapped me back to reality. My eyes darted toward the patio, and there was Marcus, stepping out from the house, a bottle of beer in hand. He froze mid-stride, his gaze locking onto us, taking in the scene by the pool with a slow, deliberate sweep. I felt a jolt of panic, expecting judgment or outrage, but instead, there was a charged silence, heavy with unspoken understanding. Then Ethan appeared behind him, followed by Caleb, each of them pausing in turn as they registered what was happening. The air thickened, electric with tension, and yet no one spoke. No one turned away. Their eyes held a quiet agreement, a shared secret passing between them without a single word. I glanced toward Gregory, still seated in the shade, his phone unwavering in his hand, capturing every moment with that same serene expression. He didn't flinch, didn't intervene. His silent encouragement was louder than any shout, and in that surreal instant, I made a choice. I didn't stop. I couldn't. The pull was too strong, the need to feel something, anything, beyond the numbness of my everyday life. And so, I surrendered again. Not just to Dante, but to the others as well. One by one, they approached, drawn into this whirlwind of forbidden desire that unfolded right there by the pool. It was a dance of unspoken rules, a blurring of boundaries I'd never imagined crossing. Each touch, each whispered breath, was a spark in the inferno, building into a sensory overload that overwhelmed me. The heat of skin against skin burned hotter than the sun overhead, the scent of chlorine mingling with the sharp tang of sunscreen and the faint musk of exertion. The distant laughter of neighbors drifted over the fence, oblivious to the storm raging in our private sanctuary, their mundane chatter a stark contrast to the intensity of what was happening here. Every sound, every sensation was amplified, the splash of water still lingering in the pool, the rough texture of the lounger beneath me, the way the air seemed to hum with a primal energy I couldn't escape. Inside, though, I was a battlefield. Guilt gnawed at me, sharp and relentless, tearing at the edges of my conscience. What was I doing? How had I let myself fall so far from the woman I thought I was? But the thrill, oh, it was a tidal wave of its own, drowning out the shame with every racing heartbeat. It was as if I'd split in two, one part of me watching from a distance, horrified, while the other reveled in the raw, unfiltered rush of being alive in a way I hadn't been in years. And through it all, there was Gregory, a still figure in the shade, his phone a silent witness to my unraveling. I caught glimpses of him between moments, his face. As the intensity of those moments by the pool began to fade, I found myself still trembling, my body buzzing with the aftershocks of adrenaline and raw emotion. The air felt heavier now, thick with the weight of what had just unfolded. I watched, almost in a daze, as Dante, Marcus, Ethan, and Caleb slowly dispersed, their voices rising again in casual banter as they drifted back toward the water. They dove into the pool with effortless grace, splashing and laughing, their energy carefree as if the storm that had just raged was nothing more than a passing breeze. It was surreal, seeing them carry on like nothing extraordinary had happened, while I sat there on the lounger, clutching a towel around me, my skin still prickling with the memory of their closeness. My mind, though, was a tempest, swirling with shame that clawed at my insides, confusion that blurred every thought, and strangest of all, a flicker of gratitude toward Gregory. He had pushed me, in his own unthinkable way, to feel something after years of being numb, years of drifting through life like a ghost in my own skin. I didn't know whether to hate him for it or cling to this fleeting sense of being alive. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the towel slipping slightly as I hugged my knees to my chest, staring at the shimmering surface of the pool. The water caught the late afternoon sun, throwing fractured light across the tiles, and I couldn't help but see it as a mirror to my fractured self. Every ripple seemed to mock the chaos inside me. My heart was still racing, not just from the rush of what had transpired, but from the gnawing questions about Gregory's role in all of this. How could he have watched, recorded even, without a trace of anger? How could he have mouthed those words, urging me to keep going, to feel alive? The memory of his calm face under that umbrella haunted me, a puzzle I couldn't solve while my emotions churned like a storm at sea. I felt exposed, raw, like every layer of who I thought I was had been peeled away, leaving me shivering despite the warmth of the day. Finally, I couldn't sit still any longer. I had to face him, had to understand. I stood, my legs shaky beneath me, the towel slipping a little more as I steadied myself. Each step toward Gregory felt heavier than the last, the distance between us stretching into something vast and uncharted. He was still there, under the shade of that oversized umbrella, his phone now resting on the small table beside him. He lowered it as I approached, his face unreadable, a mask of quiet composure that only deepened the knot in my chest. I stopped a few feet away, my breath uneven, my hands clutching the edges of the towel as if it could shield me from the truth I was about to demand. My voice trembled when I finally spoke, barely above a whisper, but carrying all the weight of my turmoil. Why? Why did you let this happen? He looked at me then. Really looked at me. His eyes softening in a way I hadn't seen in years. His voice, when he answered, was calm, almost tender, like he was soothing a wounded animal. Angela, I've watched you fade for so long. Year after year, I've seen the light in you dim, the vibrant woman I married turning into a shell. I couldn't bear it anymore. I couldn't stand seeing you so empty. He paused, letting the words sink in, and I felt them like a punch to the gut, each one echoing the hollow ache I'd tried to ignore. He continued, his gaze steady. I planned this day. I chose these men from the club because I trust them, because I knew they'd see you, really see you, and help you reclaim a piece of yourself, even if it meant breaking every rule we've ever lived by. I wanted you to feel something again, even if it wasn't with me. His confession hung in the air, heavy and sharp, cutting through the fog in my mind. I stood there, frozen, a mix of horror and relief washing over me in waves. Horror, because this wasn't just the morning after feels like waking up in a dream that doesn't quite fit. I opened my eyes to the familiar ceiling of our bedroom, the soft weight of the comforter pressing against me, and for a fleeting second, everything seems unchanged. Sunlight spills through the half-open curtains, casting golden streaks across the hardwood floor, painting the room in a warmth that feels almost mocking after yesterday's storm. I shift under the sheets, and a faint ache ripples through my body. A quiet, lingering echo of the intensity that unfolded by the pool. My mind, though, is a tangled mess, threads of confusion and raw emotion knotted so tight I can't begin to unravel them. I turn my head, expecting to see Gregory beside me, but his side of the bed is empty, the pillow still indented from where he slept. Then I hear it. The faint clink of a mug downstairs, the soft hum of the coffee maker. He's already up, moving through our routine as if the world hasn't tilted on its axis. I lie there a moment longer, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece myself back together. My skin still holds the ghost of touches, the heat of forbidden moments that played out under the sun, and my heart stumbles over the memory of Gregory's voice, so calm and deliberate, telling me he wanted this for me, that he planned it. I don't know what to do with that truth. It sits heavy in my chest, a stone I can't swallow or spit out. Finally, I force myself to move, swinging my legs over the side of the bed, my bare feet brushing the cool floor. I pull on a loose robe, the fabric soft against my still sensitive skin, and make my way downstairs, each step feeling like I'm walking into uncharted territory, even in my own home. The kitchen smells of fresh coffee, rich and grounding, a stark contrast to the chaos in my head. Gregory is there, standing by the counter in his usual faded polo and khakis, pouring a second cup as if this is just another ordinary morning. He doesn't look up right away, and I don't speak, the silence between us stretching thin and taut. I linger in the doorway, watching the way his hands move with that same measured precision I've always known. And I wonder if he feels the weight of yesterday as much as I do. My eyes trace the lines of his profile, searching for a crack, a hint of something, regret, maybe, or uncertainty. But there's nothing. When he finally glances my way, his expression is neutral, almost too composed, and I feel a flicker of unease. We're both avoiding the obvious, dancing around the truth like it's a live wire neither of us dares to touch. "Morning," he says at last, his voice even, as he slides the second mug across the counter toward me. I nod, murmuring a quiet thanks, and wrap my hands around the warmth of the ceramic, letting it anchor me. My gaze stays low, fixed on the dark swirl of liquid, because meeting his eyes feels like it might shatter whatever fragile balance we're clinging to. We stand there, separated by the counter, by unspoken words, until he breaks the quiet again with something so mundane it almost startles me. "I ordered a new batch of towels online this morning," he says, his tone light, casual, as if we're discussing the weather. He leans against the counter, a faint smirk tugging at his lips, and adds, "We're in for a hot summer, Angela. Might as well be prepared." His words hit me like a cold splash of water, sharp and unexpected. There's a layer beneath them, a subtle implication that sends a shiver racing down my spine despite the warmth of the room. Prepared for what, exactly? More days like yesterday? More boundaries crossed? More rules shattered under the guise of feeling alive? I grip the mug tighter, my knuckles whitening as I try to read the intention behind his half-smile. Is he testing me? Gauging my reaction? Or is this his way of saying, we've only just begun? My stomach twists, a cocktail of dread and something else. Something I'm ashamed to name. A flicker of intrigue at the thought of stepping into that, "Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you."